Hello there, and welcome to the next lecture in Intuition One. This is called Attention, Emotions, and Stress. And again, we're still moving toward you understanding yourself and how you operate and how your brain operates. That's your equipment. Because if you don't know how things go, you're not going to be able to take good advantage of the incredible capacities that you have. So, attention, emotion, and stress. We're going to go back to, hang on, something that we saw earlier, the limbic area of the brain. This area of the brain, the midbrain area, regulates eating, drinking, sleeping, body temperature, sex, emotions, etc. And it's sometimes referred to as the limbic area regulates the 4 F's: fighting, fleeing, feeding, and sex. Okay. So the 4 F's are all controlled, managed. You respond to the world from that midbrain area, and it's all done by the limbic system. So let's see how that works. Emotions are ordered by the hypothalamus and carried out by the pituitary. So that's a pretty strong statement. Let me give you a little bit of input. It is your consciousness that gets into a frequency state, a certain arrangement of frequencies. Remember what we said earlier, or maybe we didn't say it, but we need to say it now. Chemistry follows frequency. Okay? So emotions, you have an emotion, you're in a particular state. The hypothalamus makes note of that emotion and it generates or gives instructions to the pituitary to produce the appropriate hormone or neurotransmitter or set of chemicals that will be in harmony with that consciousness. Okay, so if you're all upset over something, your hypothalamus is going to say, we need chemicals to preserve this upset, which is not what you want. Okay, so let's look at this a little more deeply. You are wired for only two feelings: pleasure or pain. That's it. That's it. And this drawing of the hypothalamus, on top, you can see these little areas. And those areas are very, very sensitive. They discovered this when they wired a monkey and they put some electrodes in that monkey's hypothalamus. And they accidentally hit a pleasure area. There's little areas on top of the hypothalamus. Some are for pleasure, some are for pain, but that's it. And so they accidentally put the electrode in the pleasure center, one of the pleasure centers, and then they put that monkey in a cage that was wired up with like a handle that she could push on, and it would generate a little bit of a stimulation to that area in the brain. And they were going to watch and see what she did. And she discovered that pleasure center. And she laid on that bar, that handle, and she didn't eat. She didn't take care of her baby. She didn't do anything. She just laid on that bar until she passed out. And then she got up and laid on it again. She lost weight. She was addicted already. So then they put it in the pain centers, and we won't say what all happened there, but it was not good. Okay. So the humans are the same thing, wired for only two things: pleasure or pain. Why? Because the pleasure is supposed to give you the message, move toward that. That is good, hopefully. And the pain, that's to tell you, move away from that. Stay away from that. So that's how that mechanism is supposed to work. When you get human societal programming of that hypothalamus, that consciousness involved, now you're starting to mess up the pleasure and pain sensations. Okay? So let's go a little more. The physical body is capable of only two feelings, pleasure or pain. If a pain center in the hypothalamus is stimulated enough, the emotional sequences of pain and hate are triggered. If a pleasure center is stimulated, the emotional sequences of pleasure and love are triggered. So all emotions are variations of either pleasure or pain, regardless of what you want to call it. There's different degrees of pleasure and there's different degrees of pain, and we differentiate those with different words, but they're all just one or the other. So pleasure and pain are dependent first on frequency, and frequency creates chemistry. So you'll hear me say that from time to time. Frequency creates chemistry, or sometimes I'll say chemistry is dependent on frequency. Chemistry follows frequency. And that was discovered by Dr. Jean-Pierre Changeau, a French scientist who did some amazing work. And basically what he said is, if you can't produce the frequency, you can't have the chemistry, and therefore you will not have the feeling. So, your feelings are not just figments of your imagination. They are actual physical states, chemical states in the human body-mind system. And they're very powerful. Oh my. So let me try to show you an example here. Here's a bunch of frequencies. They scribble lines. Those are supposed to be frequencies. Every frequency produces a little particle. Okay, we haven't had that lecture, I don't think yet, but we're coming to it. But every frequency produces a particle. All those frequencies are jammed in there together. And when they turn on their particles, those particles interact. They're all in one local area, and they instantly recognize themselves as a group that can work together. And they have that particular arrangement has an effect. So, and that effect is some kind of emotion, or some other. Maybe it's going to create a toenail or an eyelash, whatever it is. The frequency creates the particles, and the particles group themselves according to what can work together harmoniously. Chemicals work together harmoniously. Some of the chemicals humans create do not work together very harmoniously, and they have to be forced to stay together. But in the main, this is how it works. So they create the cycle of attention. Well, you'll notice that there's cycles in the body. We cycle again and again. So here's the basic cycle of attention. First stage of attention is habituation. And this occurs when the outside stimulus no longer causes a breakup in the alpha rhythm. So you're going along. You're supposed to be relaxed all the time. Okay? So you're going along. Everything's cool. Something catches your attention. Maybe it's a police siren. Maybe it's the sound of a popcorn being popped, and you're like, oh, and the smell. Something catches your attention. Some kind of stimulation in the pattern of sounds, behaviors, etc., interferes with your alpha. That results in focusing. Where's that coming from? Okay? The focus is an effort required to assess the new stimulation coming at you. What is that? Oh, that smells good. Uh-oh, that's a siren. What's going on? That kind of thing. Oh, Looks like rain. Oh, I heard thunder. We're going to have a storm. That kind of thing. After focusing, we come to full attention, and attention is a prerequisite for learning. It occurs only when the new stimulus is novel, interesting, or frightening enough to require action or new thought patterns. Otherwise, it's just ho-hum. When we come to full attention, we decide, is that good or bad? Is that pleasure or pain? Is that good or evil? You know, that we have all these either or things. They're all versions of pleasure and pain. But we decide what that stimulus is through our attention. If it's something that does not pose a threat, we go back to relaxing. If it doesn't require any action, we go back into alpha. We should. And we return to habituation. So that's the cycle of attention. Okay, so now let's break that down a little bit further. When you have a stimulation going on in the pain center, you get the results of there's a whole sequence of events that occurs. That sequence of events creates a whole series of emotions and reactions and results. Okay, if that electrode or stimulus stimulates the pleasure center of the brain, you get another series of emotions, actions, and results. So let's look at these. The cycle of attention, if the pain center is stimulated, we start with habituation, and something happens to get our attention, and so that we have the arousal, and that arousal results in focus. And right there at that point, we come to attention. And it's the same in both sequences: habituation, arousal, focus, and attention. And then, depending on what we think that stimulus means, whatever meaning we assign to it, we have a sequence of events. If the stimulation is not good, if it triggers the pain center, then or fear center, fears of variation of pain, then there'll be an attempt to avoid that stimulus. So we say there's stimulation avoidance. If that continues, if that stimulation of that pain center continues, then we have this repulsion. Get it away from me. We're not just avoiding, now we're actively moving away. We may get into fight or flight kind of thing. If it keeps on, we descend into irritation and discomfort. Now we're getting kind of pissy, okay? If it continues, we drop into fear. Why? We fear we can't make it go away. We can't control it. If it continues, we get angry. Now anger is change energy that can't make the change. It can't make it stop. If it continues, there'll be rage. Rage is going to be an attempt to wipe out that stimulation or that person causing that stimulation. And if you descend even further into that hate cycle, you can drop into temporary insanity, at which point your consciousness shuts off your attention, your perception, and you will do anything you can to stop that pain. You will kill if you need to. But we're not programmed to kill. No human being wants to know that they have hurt another. And so consciousness very mercifully will shut off the memory of having done that. So temporary insanity is a state in which You enter into total blackness of your perception. So temporary insanity is not something that people plead and are making it up. I mean, you could pretend that you had it, but typically, if you have temporary insanity, you will never be able to recover the memory of having done that. If it's too much, then you just will shut it off. And that, it doesn't have to be that you hurt somebody. It could be that somebody's hurting you. Okay. So that's the sequence of hate. Now, the sequence of love is a little different. It's a lot different. So you have the same first four stages: habituation, arousal, focus, and attention. But if you decide that that is pleasure or feels good or is, wonderful, or you will seek more of that stimulation. So we say it is stimulation seeking. When somebody brushes my hair, I'll say, oh, you can stop in 20 years. That's an example of stimulation seeking. Attraction is the next stage. Now you want to get right in there and experience it, immerse yourself in it. And that's followed by expansiveness. Yes, this is wonderful. And consciousness shifts. Your body is very relaxed. There is a joy that is very deep that expands. That pleasure and joy expands into bliss and ecstasy that can result in full body orgasm, and it can even go into temporary illumination, which is kundalini. So that is the sequence of the cycle of attention when the cycle is being triggered by love or something good. And of course, the other cycle, the cycle of attention, when it's triggered by hate or something awful, they have totally different outcomes. So now let's look at the amount of stress that the body can handle. Let's just say that anger and hate result in fight, wanting to fight, and fear and resentment. Let's say that the cycle, let's go back here. Let's say that the cycle, when you get into anger and rage, it's too late at that point for running away. Usually you're going to stop and fight. You're wanting to stop that stimulus at all costs. But right one step above that is fear. That's flight. So it's a very fine difference between flight or fight. Okay, and you see that here. Fear, we resent people who make us fear. We hate people who cause us to be angry. We hate people who do things that are not nice to others. So that triggers the fight or flight reaction in human beings. So let's talk about this whole stress reaction, because there's a very interesting story about it. Dr. Hans Selye was a young medical student, I think in Canada. I was going to try and say what the city was, but I can't remember. It was a famous medical center. And he was in medical school. And every day when they got to their residency portion of their training, every day a lead doctor would take them around, and there'd be, 6 or 7 residents. And the doctor would say, here are the symptoms. They would go to someone's bed and they would, the lead doctor would say, here's this woman has this set of symptoms. How would you diagnose her? And Hans would just be lost. To him, it seemed like it was the same symptoms for almost every disease. It would present differently, but they were trying to get people to diagnose diseases on the basis of just the symptoms that presented. and he never got it right. And after a while, he complained. He said that they all have the same symptoms. I don't know what to say. I don't know how we can diagnose anything given we're trying to do it with these symptoms. So anyway, he graduates from medical school and he was so unsure of his ability to diagnose anything that he decided to go into research. And so he got some white rats, I think they were called Wistar rats, and he had them all treated with the some sort of specific disease. And so they were all, given this disease. And then he had them all killed and he opened them up to see what was going on inside that showed what were the specific indicators of this specific disease. So he made a note of all of those things. And then he got another set of rats and he gave them a different disease. And then when he did his research on them, opened them up to see what are the specific things or signs inside the body for this disease. And it was the same thing he noticed for the first disease. So he got a third batch. I think he got a fourth batch and maybe even a fifth. And by the time he was done, he was like, you know what? I don't know what to say. And then it hit him that there was a syndrome that occurred in every single body that was subjected to any kind of stress. And the disease was a specific kind of stress. But the syndrome, the body had a specific reaction, and it was a very, measured way of saying, we got a problem here. So let's look at what he called the general adaptation syndrome. That's the technical term for what we call stress, general adaptation syndrome. And this is what he found. The general adaptation syndrome, GAS, in stage 1 of the stress. The pituitary and the adrenals produce the hormones ACTH, which is short for adrenocorticotropic hormone, and cortisol and cortisone, which bring quick energy, heavy breathing, and a fast heartbeat within 30 seconds. You are immediately ready to fight for your life or run like heck, because those hormones, they bring you the energy to do either one of those. Okay, that's stage 1, or step 1 of stage 1. The second thing is that blood pressure rises. Blood starts moving very quickly through the system, delivering oxygen. The third thing, the liver releases sugar into the bloodstream. Oh, we got a fight going on here. We need extra energy. Let's release some sugar. That's the liver's job, is to store glucose. And when the adrenals are triggered and they start releasing adrenocorticotropic hormone or cortisol or cortisone, the liver says, oh, let's have some sugar. We need to fight. Okay? So that's quick energy for both your muscles and your brain. The fourth thing, digestive processes shut down. They shut down completely. They shut down so that the energy normally used to digest food can be used for defense. It takes a huge amount of energy to digest food. Huge. My daughter runs a clinic for people who need dialysis, and she will tell you, you cannot eat before you come in for dialysis, because so much energy is taken up by the body trying to digest food that if you start dialysis, you're going to end up with the patient in a coma. There's just not enough energy to support that individual person. And the digestion and the dialysis. So digestion in stress shuts right down. Okay. Next, number 5, red blood cells flood the arteries to take in more oxygen and more quickly dispose of carbon dioxide. And the blood is going to deliver that oxygen because it is going, like gangbusters. Number 6, blood clotting factors pour into the blood to clot quickly in case of severe injury. So if we are creatures who adapted to life a long time ago out in the wild. If something got a hold of you, something bit you, a tiger, or you broke something, you need some way of stopping the bleeding. The best chances for survival are to clot the blood so that you don't bleed to death. So in stress, the blood clots very, very quickly. Number 7, blood is withdrawn from your extremities, from your feet and your legs, your hands and your arms. And it's moved into the deep interior of the body to protect and feed vital organs and systems. You can live without an arm. You can live without a leg or a foot, but you can't live without your major organs. And so all of the body's attention goes into protecting the body trunk, and the extremities get what's left over. Number 8, endorphins, which are brain-generated opiates, pour into the bloodstream to dull perception and ease pain. However, they delay healing. So one of the big surprises of the medical system was to discover that the brain had receptors for opium. It's like, why does this opium work? Why do people like it? What, et cetera. And they discovered that the brain generates its own opium when there's a high stress reaction. And when people live in stress, they get kind of dull. They get, it'll be okay, that kind of thing. So those are called endorphins, and they pour into the bloodstream to dull perception, ease pain, but they delay healing. And then the last one, the endorphins loosen attention from the usual points of interest and move you into survival mode. When the house is on fire, it's not time to clean the toilet. It's time to get out. And so all of those things, when someone is in shock, they will try to clean the toilet. I remember when my sister was burned, she was burned badly. She was in a state of shock. She kept wanting to go back in and cover up her bird. She had a parakeet that she absolutely loved. She kept talking about the parakeet. It's a way that the endorphins are a way for you to be able to ease into whatever that incredible stress is. So these are all the things that happen in stage 1 of the general adaptation syndrome. And all of these things happen within 2 minutes. 2 minutes of the beginning of the stress. Okay, the body is very, very responsive. You may have heard the name Dr. Livingston. He was in Africa, I believe, and he was either a missionary or a medical doctor or something like that. And he was working in a jungle compound, and it was attacked by a lion. And the lion, was shaking him, and somebody from the compound one of the African men came running out and managed to scare away the lion. And later, somebody asked Livingston, what did you feel? What were you thinking when that lion got a hold of you and was shaking the daylights out of you? And he said, I really didn't feel it much at all. He said he knew something unusual was happening, but he was trying to figure out what. When somebody pounces on you and you're not expecting that, you're likely to go, what the heck? And then the brain is so fast to respond that by the time he got to the point where he was, able to think at all or was figuring out what was happening, he didn't care. He didn't feel much at all. Only afterwards, when he was trying to recover, did he have the pain. So, those endorphins, this whole system, this is a way for you to survive. So, but having said that, you don't want that stress to go on too long. If it goes on more than a few minutes, you're going to enter into stage 2. So here's stage 2. Stage 2 is known as resistance, and it creates more of everything happening in stage 1 in an effort to outlast the period of stress and to survive. So stage 2 is when, the body's attempt to rescue you and preserve you is on. The struggle is on. More chemicals are released, including sugar from the liver. You wonder why there's a lot of diabetes in our world. More adrenaline from the adrenals. And there's continuous use of nutrients meant for other organs. Digestion and absorption of food can remain shut down. What does that tell you if that stress goes on for a year or 2 or 5, like we've had here in the US and countries in the West? Those chemicals are released, sugar is pouring in, diabetes is hitting the ceiling. People are gaining weight because of cortisol and cortisone. It's an attempt to pad the body so it can't feel. And all of the nutrition that's meant to rebuild you, renew you, is getting used up at 4 times its normal rate. At the same time, digestion and absorption of new and necessary nutrients is shut off. That is a recipe for disaster. So, stage 2 is when you rally intensely to defend yourself and your body. That's the end of stage 2. And then we enter stage 3. If the threat is prolonged, you enter stage 3 of the syndrome, which is exhaustion. And in exhaustion, your resources are depleted and the defense and immune system wear down. Without immediate relief and attention to healing, the system gives up and dies. I cannot emphasize how important it is to get some relief from stress. When you're not taking in nutrition, cancer doctors will say about 1.5 to 2 years into a total stress situation, divorce, somebody dies, you lose your business, you lose your country. The result is that cancers show up. Why? Because your body has not been able to support your immune system. It's worn out. And there's no nutrition and there's no relief. So, here we are. Stress is really a pretty serious killer. It's also a drastic wearing force, which just wears you right down to a nub. By fighting or running away, the chemicals and the energy that are released in the body are discharged. When those chemicals are released, when you put chemicals into a beaker, there's going to be a reaction. Somewhere down the line, that reaction either has to get used up or it'll explode. So a chemical reaction, once begun, must be completed, or there will be an explosion or serious damage. The body stores these chemicals until either discharge or explosion occurs, which can cause serious damage. Modern society has lost so many of the previous supports that provided help for dealing with stress. Some of those supports were a religious framework or a strong framework of beliefs, and now our religious framework is falling apart. The second thing that was really a very supportive aspect of life was having a craft of some sort, something you were proud of, something you could make or do or create or invent. So exercising individual craftsmanship helped people to survive. During times of really intense personal relationship difficulties, it has been my work that has saved my sanity. And that craftsmanship is critical. You need some sort of thing that you excel at. And I'm not sure you can get that in corporation, but sometimes you can. So the next thing is a feeling of having a place in the social order. What happened when everybody had to wear a mask and stay home? All of the people felt like they didn't belong, they didn't fit. What was happening to the social order? It was being torn apart. So now that has been lost. And number 4, the security of knowing how to survive in nature. I have that. I don't know of a whole lot of people who do. Maybe out in the country or in the jungles, yeah. People know how to survive a little better, but a lot of people really don't know how to survive in the lap of nature. And if our world, our cities, our supply systems, our infrastructures come apart, they won't be able to survive. One of the things that gives you a feeling of, okay, I'm ready to handle stress, is knowing you know how to survive. So all of these things, very, very critical, and all of them are under duress right now. So this is a quote from Daniel Goleman. He has this wonderful book called Vital Lies, Simple Truths. He says, quote, while stress arousal is a fitting mode to meet an emergency, as an ongoing state, it's a disaster. Sustained stress leads to pathology. And it does. You do not want to live in stress. So let's draw a couple conclusions here. When it comes to consciousness and the development of intuition, nothing is more important than getting to the roots of stress. The roots of stress are the decisions you have made, sometimes going back to when you were an infant. Decisions you have made about the world and how you were taught to think it should be, instead of looking at the world as it is. Very often you will hear the term, and you'll probably hear this in other classes, in the later intuition classes. The goal is to become realized, a realized being, an illuminated being who lives in an illuminated state. How do you do that? You do that when you become able to look around you and see what is. Okay? You look at what's real. And many of us, I had to do a lot of work to get to the roots of decisions that I had made way back 2 years, 3 years, 8 years, 12 years of age. Decisions that were not, they were no longer relevant, or they were a legitimate kind of, they were based on a legitimate kind of grief about something that happened in my life, and I had a pretty good life. So I was taught through the church, through my parents, through my family, the way we lived, through society, this is how the world should be. This is what is good. Other cultures maybe have something similar, but a little different. So, we look at other cultures and like, are they okay? And that is the basis of war. We don't need that. We need to grow up and be taught to see what is. And when you are living in stress, you are not able, because of the presence of endorphins and the slow, gradual breakdown of the system, you're not able to see what is or deal with what is. So I think it's in Intuition 4, we learn how to do some root work. It's really handy. It's very handy. And it's easy to do. So this, I think, brings pretty much our lecture on attention, emotions, and stress to an end. Thank you so much for watching. Be aware and beware of stress. Take some time to unwind every so often, at least. If not, make that your way of being over the course of the day. So thank you for watching.